Hi, friends. Today I want to tell you a story. I hope you enjoy it. I'm Jennifer Chun, and this is the story of how I found out that the quietest person in the room can have the most power. Life can be strange. One day, your spoiled cousins boss you around. The next, you're the one firing them. But let me go back to the beginning. My Aunt Victoria was always different from the rest of our family. While her brothers and sisters became doctors, lawyers, and accountants, she built a tech company from nothing. Her company, Chin Innovations, grew to be worth $2 billion. But you wouldn't know it by looking at her. She wore plain clothes, drove an old car, and still lived in the small house she bought when she started her business. I was the only one who really knew her. My cousins, Marcus and Diana, went to fancy schools and bragged about our family name. I spent my weekends at Aunt Victoria's house, learning to code on her old computer. Running a business isn't about having a fancy degree, Jenny, she told me once as I tried to fix a computer bug. It's about noticing what others don't. When I was 12, my parents died in a car crash, and Aunt Victoria took me in. Some family members whispered she did it out of guilt because she hadn't helped my dad when he was broke. But I knew that wasn't true. She saw something in me others didn't. For 15 years, I worked at her company, starting from the bottom. While Marcus and Diana partied through college, I learned everything from answering customer calls to creating new products. My cousins made fun of me and called me Aunt Victoria's shadow, but I didn't mind. I was learning things no school could teach. Then came the news: stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Aunt Victoria handled it like she did everything, calmly and sensibly. "Jenny," she said one evening as we sat in her home office, "I need a promise from you." "Anything," I said, holding back tears. "Don't show them how smart you are. Not until the time is right." She gave me a sealed envelope. "Everything you need is in here. But timing matters. You'll know when." At the time, I didn't understand. But soon I would. Aunt Victoria passed away peacefully 3 months later. The funeral was full of tech industry leaders.
But my cousins still made it about themselves.
Marcus cried during a speech, even though he hadn't seen her in years. Diana cried loudly for the cameras while holding her expensive handbag. The real surprise came during the will reading. The whole family met at the company headquarters. Her siblings, their partners, Marcus, Diana, and me. Everyone thought Marcus would get the company because he was the oldest male. Others thought shares would be split among the family. That's how things usually worked in our traditional Chinese family. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, began reading. At first, it was normal: gifts for loyal workers, donations to charity. Then came the shock. "To my niece, Jennifer Chun, I leave my controlling shares in Chin Innovations, 70% of the total voting stock. The other 30% will go to current employees based on how long they've worked here." The room exploded. "This can't be," Marcus yelled, his face red. "She's just a junior worker. She doesn't even have a business degree." Diana cried harder. "We're the real heirs." Aunt Victoria only took her in because she felt sorry for her. Their father, Uncle James, stood up looking weak. "There must be a mistake. Victoria wouldn't give it all to the help," Diana snapped. Mr. Patterson stayed calm. "The will is clear. And she was in her right mind when she signed it." He pulled out another paper. "Also, Jennifer Chun has secretly been deputy CEO for 2 years. Everything is legal." I stayed quiet, remembering Aunt Victoria's advice. It wasn't the right time yet. The family meeting after that was rough. They met at Uncle James's big house, the one he bought using money Aunt Victoria had loaned him years ago. I was invited, but it was obvious what they thought of me. "Jenny, be a dear and pour the coffee," Aunt Helen, Marcus's mom, said with a fake smile. "That's what you're good at, isn't it? Serving people?" I played along, pouring coffee as they talked like I wasn't even in the room. "We need to fight the will," Uncle James said firmly. Victoria clearly wasn't thinking straight at the end. Marcus looked at me with a smirk as I filled his cup. "Just look at her. She's not ready to run a billion-dollar company. She doesn't even dress right." He wasn't wrong about my outfit. I had on a plain blouse and pants, while they wore expensive designer clothes. But what they didn't know was that I owned the building where their favorite designer had its main store. The board won't accept her, Diana added, looking at herself in her phone. She doesn't have the right education or the right connections. I kept serving coffee while they planned how to get rid of me. They talked for hours about lawyers, board members, media.
Not once did they talk to me.
To them, I was invisible just like always. Finally, Uncle James looked at me. Jenny, this can go easy or hard. Just sign the shares over to Marcus, and we'll give you a nice payout. Enough to live comfortably. That's best for everyone. I looked at their hopeful faces. The same people who ignored me at family events, who mocked my bond with Aunt Victoria, who once called me the family charity case. I'll think about it, I said quietly, picking up the coffee cups. The board meeting is on Monday. I'll decide then. They smiled, sure they'd already won. Marcus even patted me on the head. Good girl. I knew you'd come to your senses. As I left, I took out my phone and the envelope Aunt Victoria had given me. Inside were documents, codes, and a letter. The time for hiding is over, she had written. Let them see who you really are. I smiled and sent a few prepared emails. Monday's meeting would be one to remember. What my cousins didn't realize was that while they were busy being the family's public face, I had spent 15 years becoming the company's core. Every major client contract had my name. Every hit product in the last 5 years had my code. Most key staff were hired because I recommended them. They thought Monday would be their big win. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning was clear and sunny. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., 2 hours early. The security guards greeted me with respect. They had known who I really was all along. I heard Marcus and Diana had spent the weekend calling board members, trying to get support for their takeover. Let them try. I changed into the outfit I had ready. Not a designer suit, but a black dress Aunt Victoria had given me for my last birthday. It fit perfectly. Power isn't about looking powerful, she had said. It's about being powerful. At 7:45, I watched from my window as Marcus and Diana walked in, full of confidence. They brought Uncle James and Aunt Helen too, probably for backup. They were all dressed like they were walking a red carpet, not attending a serious meeting. Time to say hello, I whispered, picking up the folders I prepared. The boardroom was tense when I stepped in. 12 board members sat around the big table. My family filled one side. Marcus was already in the CEO's chair, flashing his usual grin. Jenny, Diana said sweetly. Be a dear and grab us some coffee, will you? I smiled.
Sure.
But first, I pressed the intercom. Sarah, bring in the documents, please. My assistant, who my cousins always thought worked for Aunt Victoria, came in with a cart and handed folders to each board member. What is this? Marcus said, trying to grab one for me. Be patient, cousin, I said calmly, passing out the rest. You'll find out soon. When everyone had a folder, I walked to the head of the table. Marcus was still in the CEO's chair. You're in my seat, I said quietly.
He laughed.
Come on, Jenny. We all know Aunt Victoria. I cut him off, this time with a firm voice. You're in my seat. Move. There was something in my tone. He stood up, trying to play it cool. The board members had started reading the folders, and I could see their expressions change. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, inside those folders are reports of every big decision made at Chin Innovations over the past 5 years. You'll see my signature on almost all of them. I looked at Marcus. Yes, those decisions you thought others made? They were mine. Marcus tried to speak, but I kept going. You'll also find records of some unusual money transfers. Marcus, would you like to tell the board why $2 million of company money was used to pay off your gambling debts last year? His face turned pale. That's private. Diana, I turned to her as she flipped through the folder nervously. Maybe you'd like to explain the fake consulting company you made to charge the business for work you never did? You can't prove, she started. Oh, but I can. Aunt Victoria, and I saved every detail. We let it go at the time, hoping you'd grow up and take responsibility. We were wrong. Uncle James jumped to his feet, his face red with anger. Now listen here. Sit down, Uncle, I said quietly. Your part is on page 12. Strange loans, misused funds, fake companies. Should I keep going? He sank back into his seat. For years, I told the board, I worked in silence, learning every piece of this company. While others claimed my work as theirs, I stayed quiet because Aunt Victoria taught me real power doesn't need praise. It just needs results. I clicked a remote. Charts lit up the screen behind me. While I was quietly managing things, our R&D team got 200% more productive. We kept 98% of our clients. Our profits doubled. The board started nodding, finally realizing who had really been behind the company's success. Now, I said, you have a choice. You can support my cousin's plan to take over. But if you do, I'll send all this proof to the press and the authorities.
Or,
I clicked again, and more papers appeared on screen. We can go forward with the expansion I've been working on, 5 new tech hubs, big-name research partners, and a brand-new product line that will put us far ahead of the competition. The room stayed quiet. Board members looked at each other, thinking it over. Then Mr. Rodriguez, the oldest board member, spoke. I say we vote to make Jennifer Chun our official CEO, starting right now. Seconded, several others said at once. This is crazy, Marcus shouted. She's nothing, just a poor orphan. Mr. Chin, I cut him off coldly. You're fired. Security is waiting outside. Diana, you too. Your things are already packed. You can't do this. Diana cried. We're your family. I looked at her, calm. Family? Was I family when you made me serve coffee? When you made fun of my clothes, my education, my loyalty to Aunt Victoria?
no, Diana.
You made it clear how you saw me. Security guards came in, people who had known my real role for years. Uncle James. Aunt Helen, I said, turning to them. You have 2 options. Stay on as quiet partners and keep your shares, or leave with your kids.
Decide now.
They looked at their children being taken out and nodded quietly. When things settled down, I spoke to the board again. Now, let's talk about those expansion plans. The next few hours flew by. My role as CEO was confirmed. The board approved the growth strategy. A press release about the new leadership went out. That night, I sat in Aunt Victoria's old office, now mine, looking at her photo. You taught me well, I whispered. Power isn't loud or flashy. It's about waiting, learning, and knowing when to act. My phone buzzed with messages from family suddenly pretending they cared about me. I ignored all of them, except one. It was from Maria, my aunt's old housekeeper, who was kind to me even when no one else was. You did good, Miss Jenny, she wrote. Your aunt would be proud. I smiled and looked out over the city lights. This company would thrive with me in charge, not because I was born into wealth, but because I had earned everything. As for Marcus and Diana, I heard they were trying to start a new business. Good luck. Now they'd have to learn what real work feels like. As for me, I'll always remember Aunt Victoria's biggest lesson. Success doesn't come from looking powerful. It comes from being powerful. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who owns it.